Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of Immigration Insanity. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started by immediately dispelling the myth that this amount of immigration is normal. Take a look at our immigration population as a percentage of our total population since 1960. As you can see, it's dramatically increased since that time. Normal in 1960 was 5%. Granted, there have been other periods throughout our history where it's been higher. But 5% is where it was then. And now it's over tripled in the last 60 years to 15%. If it's ever reached 15% before, it had to have been over 100 years ago. Now, I probably don't need to show you any more numbers to prove that this isn't normal, because you've seen with your own eyes that it's not normal. But if we look at the actual numbers, this is an over 40 million immigrant increase since 1960. During the same time period, our government's own numbers show they've granted permanent residence status to 50 million immigrants since 1960. So the number may even be higher. To put this in perspective, there are only 30 other countries in the world with a total population over 50 million. And our government has brought an amount of immigrants into our country in just the last 60 years that's greater than the total population of 85% of the countries in the world. And many of these countries have been around for years. Now, I hope this gives you a better understanding of how big of a number and how many people this is. To get a more recent snapshot of the scope and direction of this program, I compared America's net migration over the last 5 years to the rest of the world. According to macro trends, our country had a net positive migration of 4.4 million people in the last 5 years. Now, it seems like a lowball number, but this period did include the COVID years. Our government says they granted 4.7 million green cards during this period. So we know we're close. So for consistency, let's use the macro trends number of 4.4 million. Because even using that number, we still had the highest number of migrants of any country in the world, and almost double the next nearest country. Now take a look at this list that shows the countries with the highest amounts of migrants over the last 5 years. Of course, we're at the top of the list, but note that the other countries at the top of the list with us, Syria, Poland, Russia, they're countries on the border of a war-torn country during this time. In the higher than normal migrant increase is the result of people temporarily fleeing those war zones. But we aren't near a war zone. This isn't a temporary influx. This is permanent policy for us. Our country only makes up 4% of the world's population, but we receive about 20% of all the immigrants in the world. That's way more than our share. Like I said, this isn't normal, and most of these immigrants came here legally. But I took a closer look at the list of countries with the highest immigration, because it looked familiar to me, and it was. I don't know if you picked up on it also, but remember in Article 10 we exposed the countries that have been chosen to lose in the climate change game? Here's that list. The climate change game losers, for the most part, were made up of us, Europe, and Russia. And when you look at the immigration loser list, it's the same list. Now, there are a few additions on the immigration list, namely Canada and Australia. Do you think it's merely a coincidence that the same countries that have been chosen to lose in the climate change game have also been chosen to lose in this immigration replacement scheme? I'll let you debate about that. But one thing that doesn't require any debate is that America is on both lists, and that's bad for you. And like the climate change game that's encouraged and approved by our government, this legal invasion is also encouraged and approved by our government. But you may be saying to yourself right now, I never supported or approved an immigration increase, but actually you did by listening to this guy and voting for his candidates. And his candidates always vote for more unlimited immigration into our country. I can hear you now, not my political party, it's the other guys, the other political party. They're flooding our country with immigrants. So let's take a look at the facts. Let's determine if it really is just the other guy. Remember the migrant increase graph we looked at? I color-coded it this time to show the migrant increase by the president's political party. Of course, blue for Democrat, red for Republican. And as you can see, fundamentally it doesn't change. It keeps going up regardless of what party's in charge and what the media tells you. It's gone up about 1 million a year for the last 30 years, even when your party's in control. But this graph's the total of both legal and illegal immigrants and migrants. So let's just look at legal immigrants only. Since the government reports how many new green cards are issued each year, we only have to count up the green cards issued to determine how much legal immigration occurred during this period. So let's take a look. Our government grants about 1 million green cards each year. And in case you weren't convinced already that neither political party is serious about stopping immigration, I also color-coded this graph by presidential party. First going back to 61, no change by party. And then since 1989, so the results are easier for you to see. And you can see for yourself, there isn't any difference between the parties. Other than during COVID, there's little change regardless of who's in charge or regardless of what the media tells you. Now here's the part that I find fascinating. For years, many people have been led to believe that Democratic administrations are soft on immigration. Republican administrations, they're tough on immigration. But in reality, there's little difference. And if anything, the results are actually the opposite. Years with the highest legal immigration have occurred under Republican presidents, not Democratic ones. This is just another example that proves that listening to the media will mislead you every time. And the point is, well, they've kept you distracted with the supposedly 11 million illegal immigrants that are government estimates are in our country. They verifiably brought in 50 million legal immigrants. So what specific government policies were enacted that enabled this massive influx of immigrants into our country? How did they execute this plan to replace you? Now, they did it with the implementation of an endless list of American last immigration policies over the last 60 years. And the first and the most significant one was the Immigration Act of 1965. Now, the basis of this new law was that our immigration quota system, in place since 1921, was unfair and racist because it maintained America as primarily a Christian European country. Now, this logic doesn't make any sense, nor does it seem to apply to any other country in the world. No African country is considered racist for wanting to maintain its African heritage, not today, not 60 years ago. No Middle Eastern country is called a supremacist state for wanting to maintain their Arab population, just like no Asian country is considered racist for wanting to maintain its Asian population and heritage. But our political leaders considered America, a country with a European population and a European heritage, to be racist for wanting to maintain its European heritage. And our leaders at the time were so convinced or bullied to believe that, they felt the only way to prove that they weren't racist was to vote for this bill. And this bill, like most others that are passed by Congress, it did the exact opposite of what they told you it would do. And it had 3 profound effects on our country. First, they said it wouldn't increase the amount of immigration to our country. But they lied. It opened up immigration to America from every country in the world. And the world did come here whether we needed them or not, whether we wanted them to or not. And immigration has skyrocketed since, as we've already seen. Second, they said this bill wouldn't change the ethnic makeup of America. But they lied here also. In 1960, the Census Bureau reported that the population of America was 89% white. But today, compliments of the Immigration Act of 1965, this number's plummeted to 58%. That's an incredible 31% drop. Now think about this. On the current path in a few years for America, and not many years after that for the rest of the world, there likely won't be a single country in the world left with a majority European population. Not even in Europe. In the good old days, we called this ethnic cleansing or genocide. But today, our government calls it progress. And third, this bill, coupled with a series of other government-induced failures, has helped to move millions of free and independent middle-class Americans of all races to the serf class, where they become wards of the state that have to rely on the government for life's basic needs. And ironically, for years, we've been told that the rest of the world hates us for our freedom and independence. But maybe that isn't true. Maybe the people that hate us for our freedom and independence are much closer to home than you've been led to believe. But rewriting our legal immigration laws, that wasn't enough. So other American last policy changes were made to facilitate illegal immigration as well. Our government suddenly lacked the will to protect our borders anymore. Maybe it's because they're so busy protecting the borders of every other country in the world. But this failure helped to fuel a huge surge of illegal immigration into our country. Also, the policy of rewarding illegal immigrants with permanent resident status rather than deportation, that's always a bad plan if you want to limit illegal immigration. But in 1986, Ronald Reagan, supposedly a staunch conservative, did exactly that by passing the Immigration Act of 1986 that rewarded about 3 million illegal immigrants with lawful permanent resident status and ultimately citizenship for most of them. You can see this huge spike in the permanent residents occurring here. This move also assured a new wave of mass illegal immigration into our country, since they believed that if they got here, they would also eventually gain resident status rather than be deported. And so far, they haven't been wrong. That's why we have 11 million illegal aliens in our country today, all waiting for the next Reagan-style amnesty program to occur. Yes, we were all fooled again. You know what else has helped to fuel more legal and illegal immigration? Rewarding immigrants with welfare benefits after they get here that include free housing, free food, education, free medical benefits, all at your expense, of course. These benefits are better than many hard-working Americans have. So naturally, a giveaway like that will guarantee you'll get more immigrants. How about sanctuary cities? This unbelievable policy has certainly played a role in ensuring more illegal immigration. And it's helped also to ensure that the people that have violated our laws, they're not held accountable. And why should they be? The leaders of these sanctuary cities aren't held accountable either for failing to enforce the laws of our land. You try violating federal law or fail to cooperate with the federal government. I assure you that won't go well for you. But magically in these sanctuary city cases, the federal government tells us they just aren't able to do anything about it. But they are doing something. They're turning a blind eye to make sure you finish your death march. So let's stop there for today. When we meet next, we'll talk about another specific government policy that's made this insanity possible. This policy is the worker visa program. Another policy that it seems sane on the surface, but it isn't. We already know that the number of legal immigrants has skyrocketed and quadrupled since 1960. But that's nothing. The number of foreign workers and their families coming to our country to work has gone up not 4 times, try 4 times 4. A 16-fold increase just since 1985. And it brings about 5 million people to our country every year to work. This policy is intent on replacing every American worker with a foreign worker, regardless of your job or your level of education. If you have a job, you're going to want to learn more about this program. I'll see you next time.